Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AKA Hotel Residences Corman Communities, Ariel Property Advisors, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Mortgage Lending, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Casamatides Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Ocean First Bank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, Stonehenge NYC, SVN CPEX Real Estate Services, Tierra CRG, the Marengo Family Foundation, and these friends.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, host of the Stoller Report, celebrating our 20th anniversary today. Today, I'm fortunate to have 4 individuals who are involved with the office market in the tri-state region, who will provide their insight on the state of the market, what's really happening, and what they see happening over the next couple of months. My guests include David Sheehan, who is the Senior Vice President, Asset Management and Leasing for Columbia Property Trust. David Falk, who's the President of the New York Tri-State Region for Newmark Knight Frank. Scott Gallen, who's the CEO and Principal of Handro Properties and Handler Real Estate Organization. And last but not least, Robert Wise, who's the President and CEO of the RPW Group. Thank you for all being here. So we have owners, we have operators, we have a publicly held company. David, looking at your website, you have a number of properties that are in development today with occupancy in 2021 and 2022. How do you and the company see the opportunities out there, and are people signing leases?
So we're still optimistic that people and companies in New York City want high quality real estate. And we think that, the historic trend, when there's a downturn in the market, there's a flight to quality. The property that we build specifically is Midtown South, boutique in size, really geared towards that firm that's looking forward to attracting and retaining long-term talent, urban commuting patterns, suburban commuting patterns, quality of life inside the office, quality of life outside the office. So all of our developments continue to go forward. 799 Broadway in Greenwich Village, 101 Franklin Street in Tribeca, Terminal Warehouse in the Hudson Yards district. And we think that I don't think anyone believes that it's the same market that we were in 6 months ago, but I think we're all long-term believers in the vitality and the spirit of New York City.
Robert Wise, you have a property in New York City, but you have a substantial holding up in the suburbs. There's a discussion that a number of tenants are going to the suburbs. Have you seen more leasing recently on a short-term basis or on a long-term basis in the suburbs, in the Westchester, Connecticut market?
Well, the answer is definitely yes. And I must say that even before the pandemic, there has been a dramatic change in the suburban markets. And it's happening primarily on the residential aspect. Westchester County has approximately 10,000 apartments in one form of development or another. And that is brand new for the county. It has not happened in many, many years. And that's definitely going to fuel the office market as well. Since the pandemic, we have seen a number of companies. We signed 5 leases with companies that were in Manhattan, and we think that's going to continue. However, I don't think it's a dramatic change in the future of New York City. I think that if September 11, that was especially targeted to New York City, did not change the city for the worse in a way that, I mean, obviously was a horrible disaster, but 5 years later, the city had more development than ever. I think that ultimately New York City is going to come back as strong or stronger than it was before, and it might be sooner than we think. However, I also believe that companies are going to diversify, and they're going to be looking at having offices in the suburbs as well as New York City.
So here's the question: of the 5 tenants that you signed up recently, are they leaving their offices in the city, or is this a secondary office that they're opening for people like David Falk, or for people who are just trying to have the opportunity to be closer to home and also have the office in the city?
David, we don't consider him a tenant. He's part of the family, so he's not part of the five tenants. But in short, we have a tenant that moved from the GM building. We have a tenant that was renewing in New York City and decided to renew for half of the space, and the other half moved to Westchester. And we have several smaller companies that the principals live in Westchester or Fairfield County, and they are moving altogether to Westchester.
Scott Gallen, you have some B buildings with small tenants. Certain small tenants are having major difficulties during this pandemic. How do you see the market today for your clients and your tenants?
Well, it's been an interesting 6 months, Michael, and I've met hundreds of tenants that I had never met before or Zoomed or spoken to. I think we've managed to keep, we've lost a handful of tenants and worked out with the rest of them. As everyone has said here, I'm a New York City cheerleader. I've been living and or working here 45 straight years. Long term, I think the city is going to be tremendous. I think we're in for a bit of pain. We took a lot of pain the last 4 months. I agree with David. I ran a business after 9/11 with 300 people and 50,000 feet over in one of those New York buildings over there, and everybody said nobody would come back to work, bridges, tunnels, whatever. And within 90 days, we had 90% of our folks back, and then the future was turned out to be a terrific 15 years. As far as these tenants are concerned, the smaller businesses are struggling, need some help. The medium-sized businesses, and some of them are doing exceptionally well. It depends on what space they're in. We have people that are in IT and people that are in web design, and those folks' business is off the charts, actually. And then we have people related to the theater district, which that's a very difficult proposition. Obviously, the restaurants are a bit nightmarish, and we're working with them. We came to an arrangement with all our restaurants, and we want to try to help them stay in business. But I think it's very use specific, Michael. The garment tenants, we don't have many left, but they're very difficult. But luckily, we have a lot of service tenants who can do their business remotely now. And I will say that about 50% of our tenants are back with some population in their spaces as of today.
David Falk, you have the tri-state market. You know what's going on. What are we really seeing? Are people signing leases? I know there was the Facebook lease, but as you and I discussed last week, that lease has been in works for at least 6 to 7 months. What's happening with leasing today? What about leasing, as Scott was talking about, the tech companies, the life science companies? Where do we see the market? What's really happening? And how are executives at companies, and this is also for David Sheehan to say, how are these executives of large companies saying what they want to do, or are they putting things on hold today?
Well, first of all, congratulations on your 20th anniversary. Job exceptionally well done for the Stoller Report, so congrats. So you're right. All these large transactions we read about, those were in the works prior to March 1st. So the Facebook transaction I thought was a really important transaction. So was Raymond James that happened at 320 Park. They were both significant transactions. And if you read what Facebook wrote, they said that for our recruiting and our retaining of employees, for them to be in our culture, to experience our creativity in our four walls, that separates us from our competitors. And I think that's a very important statement. We are finding that the CEOs, yes, it's been this summer, the real estate business has been on pause. There's no question about it. It's been on pause in the spring. As a broker, we were not allowed to show space until about 6 weeks ago. So you couldn't get together and strategize and go and move forward on something. The CEOs, though, have been trying to figure out, does this remote experience work or not? And it clearly depends on your industry. If you're an accountant, it may work. If you're a coder, it may work. But we are finding from the vast majority of people we're talking to, CEOs are saying it doesn't work full time. Our people who are trying to learn about the culture are remote and isolated. They're not being they're not learning, they're not growing, they're not being recognized within the company. And so some of our decision makers are saying, okay, how do I look at my real estate when I come out of this, or while I'm trying to come out of this? And most of them are looking at different ways of maybe taking 10 to 15% of their workforce and shifting those people in two or 3 days a week, and another group 2 or 3 days a week, setting up, let's say, a locker with a headset, a keyboard, have their own chair, enhanced cleaning protocols. In essence, less space, not full-time remote work, being part of the environment, but trying to be more cautious and have more cost savings. Some of our clients are saying, I'd like to reduce my rent to revenue ratio. How do I do that? And so they're all studying how they're going to occupy. But I think we've all learned a lot, even at the storm last week when most people lost internet, they lost power. Working from home is not set up full-time for the great majority of people to be effective.
David Shakin.
So I think what David Fox said is totally right. What we're seeing is a pause as these companies decide how they want to use space going forward, not whether or not they need to be in New York to get at the population that helps their business push forward. The most important thing for New York City is cleanliness and safety, because all these companies are here to get at that educated, motivated 21 to 40-year-old workforce. And those people want to be in New York because of the culture, the energy, and the vibe. And if we keep this up, some companies may be smaller, they may be larger, they may have more hoteling desks and conferencing and less private offices. But that nexus of intellectual, that's why people are here. And that's why we continue to bet on urban locations in coastal environments in this country.
Scott, your properties are located between the Port Authority and Penn Station, and also you're involved with the fashion bid. What's really happening with the security, and how are you handling these properties?
Well, I am on the bid board, and we've been aggressively discussing this with the city on a daily basis. The principal reason that you're seeing what you're seeing and all that press about the Upper West Side and what's going on here is that the shelters had to empty out at the beginning of COVID for legal social spacing. And there are hundreds of vacant hotels in New York, and the hotels understandably were willing to take in these folks and at a couple of $100 a night to sustain their viability. And now you have thousands of hotel rooms that are occupied by folks that in some cases create difficulties. And now I have more tenants actually telling me they're concerned about the safety and what they see on the street than they are the virus. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I'm always cheering about stats and I'm sending tenants things and how New York is the safest city in the country right now. And people are starting to buy into that. But now I hear, but I'm afraid to walk out the building because some guys across the street in the plaza on Broadway shooting up heroin at 3 in the afternoon. So this is a big problem. The city likes to tell us it'll be a 4 to 6 month transition once they can move a lot of the people out of the hotels back into shelters or otherwise. And we are aggressively telling them there are 5 bids here in Midtown in aggregate, and we are telling them that is not an acceptable proposition. I live in Manhattan, as a lot of us do, and I can't believe what I'm seeing now on a daily basis. I was here in the late 70s, and what I'm seeing now is sort of tantamount to what I saw around Penn Station in 1977. It's the right problem. David's got it right. If you don't feel safe, forget about working from home, working from an office. You don't want to be in a place you don't feel safe. Safety is the A1A issue. It's what we all care about when we get a new mayor. And so it's paramount, Michael. And just one other thing about work from home with what David Falk said. You know, I told people when they were forced to work from home legally and everybody was sort of doing Zoom in their pajamas, nobody felt particularly awkward about it because that's what everybody was doing. And the dogs and the cats and the kids and the wives and the husbands, it sort of became, you know, a mantra. But when people start to go back to work, and they have, and when they start to continue to go back to work, folks who are trying to do this remotely and not availing themselves of the ad hoc nature of being in an office and spontaneity and things, I think there will be a movement towards gravitating back to the office. And somebody said the other day that 5% of folks pre-pandemic were working from home in New York. I don't know if that's right or not, but assume it was right. My guess is maybe that goes to 10% or something thereabouts. But I imagine in a year, we're going to see the vast majority of people that inhabited offices in Manhattan re-inhabiting those offices.
So here's a question which I know all of you have been involved with slightly or even to a larger degree, the co-working phenomena, okay? We know what has happened to WeWork, okay? It's continuing to operate in different structures. Robert, you have, I believe, some co-working space up in Westchester. David, you've had co-working tenants in the past. David Falk, you've represented both co-working tenants and landlords. Where do we see the future in co-working?
The co-working that we find in Westchester is a more traditional co-working where people have individual offices. In the city where you have benching or very high density co-working, that's definitely going to be more difficult. But we have a few locations in Westchester that were fairly highly occupied, and in the last 6 months, they are all booked. And everyone that was concerned going to the city and wanted an office and didn't want to work from home took space on those. I think that is going to be an evolution. I think that the co-working that we've seen with the typical WeWork might evolve into something else, but I think that there is going to be no change in terms of the demand for that space.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that. I think that Robert's correct that their demand will continue. You know, I think people always assume that the WeWork layouts and Notels and others were all this open benching. There was some of that, but a lot of it, when you walk down the hall, they were just small interior offices. So that's a good thing because they won't have to be reworked as much because people are not going to want to be in an open, shared, communal, long table. They're going to want to have some separation. But the whole concept, we're now going into a market, and it's going to be this way for the next 18 months, where the word flexibility and the words preservation of capital, those are going to be some of the most important words that tenants are thinking about. And all of those words I just mentioned really are right on point with the co-working model, which is really meant to be an accommodation, a short-term solution for this. So the other thing to think about, by the way, is co-working as an entity occupies about 18 million square feet in Manhattan. And 18 million square feet is really not in the statistics of availability. So something to keep an eye on because some of this space could be made available. Right now, we're looking at about 3 million square feet of sublet space that hasn't really been publicly listed yet. So if you take the 3 million square feet plus adding some percentage of the co-working space, that's a lot of shadow space that could also be short-term flexible opportunities for tenants.
I know, Robert Wise, you've been always looking at more properties in the city. I know, David, you bought Normandy Trust, so you increased the number of size. So what's going on with regard to the investment sales in the office property? Robert, since you want to be active and you've been looking for properties, are you seeing more? Are they reducing the prices, or are the prices remaining the same?
Frankly, over the past 4 to 6 months, the market is at a standstill. People are fully aware of the fact that if they put properties on the market now, the price is going to be chopped dramatically. And I think even though we don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 months, 4 months, in real estate, a year is kind of overnight. So the expectation is that within a year, that might be 6 months, things are going to start coming back to normal. So we haven't seen any deals of any substance coming on the market. And frankly, the leasing part has moved, but in percentage terms, in a very small way. But on sales, we haven't seen any activity.
We looked at a couple of office properties in Philadelphia 2 months ago, Michael, that was sort of whispered to us. And the problem is there's just no mark. No one has any idea, how to apply a cap rate. There's no comp, there's no nothing. So we don't see a sales market right now. Everyone's afraid to put anything on the market. And moreover, when you start a conversation looking at a rent roll that is impaired but may not be impaired in 5 months. So other than some desperate seller, we don't see anything moving anywhere.
David Schenkel?
I was going to add to real estate is a lagging indicator of the economy. And to Scott's point, the bid ask, both on the investment side and the leasing side, is still large enough where the sellers and lessors are trying to hold on to pre-COVID pricing, and buyers and the lessees want new pricing. It takes a while for that to regulate.
David Falk, what's going on the industrial conversions to office? Is there any activity, or is it quiet?
When you say industrial convergence, you mean in Manhattan, older industrial buildings?
Yeah, the older industrial buildings that you've been working on.
I mean, everyone, I agree with what everyone is saying on the call. This is not a discussion for 3 months or 5 months. If you're taking a building on West 25th Street and you're investing the next 18 months in transforming it, you have to believe in the project. And we all do believe that, listen, once there's a vaccine and there's a path and people start feeling confident, these buildings that are going to try to create the best of the old with the best of the new, because that's what they're doing. They're taking the old charm and adding everything new. And now with all the new post-COVID building initiatives with hands-free technology and sensors and everything, wave technology, we're involved in a building, 520 West 20th, that is just Morris Ashby design. It's just being finished. It's gorgeous. And it has everything you'd want in a building is from a branded image. And now when we come out of this and into the fall, we're expecting when people start coming back to the office to start getting people looking at this, because it's very, very unique. And you can't find that kind of a statement, out there in the market. As a firm, and hopefully our clients getting back into the city and starting to take one step at a time moving forward.
There was an article, and I agree with the writer of the article. If you want to get people back to the city, you have to reopen the restaurants, because they need to go to a restaurant. They need the amenities, it's going back over there. I know that my friend in the catering business is doing like 200 meals a day for one of the Hudson Yards building. Are you coming out with programs and accommodations to take care of the tenants with regard to their food requirements?
An observation, again, from the brokerage side, the streetscape is the most, and I agree with Scott and David about safety and homelessness. That is something that really didn't become so apparent until 6 months ago. But the streetscape, when we go back to Manhattan, and I was there last week, it's quiet. And if you want to go have a place to eat during lunch in Midtown Manhattan, you need to be sitting outside. There's not many places that have outside seating. And then when it gets cold out, that's the next question. How is that resolved? So it is a problem. there's restaurateurs are going to have a difficult time unless it's a percentage rent of making this make sense.
Michael, you know, as David just said, I've been here almost every day between Midtown and Upper East Side. Midtown is ghostly. I don't know what to say. I mean, you walk up 6th Avenue, Park Avenue, and you go to the Upper East Side at night. My wife and I are going out to dinner. Every single restaurant is packed outside, obviously. It's very vibrant. And until we get some vibrancy, i.e. people back here, that's not going to happen. Now, the city announced this morning that 75% of the kids were going to come back partial physical attendance. That's the census they took last week. So, and my understanding is most of the private schools are going to have in-house learning. So hopefully when the summer ends and people decamp and come back to New York, and if school's the driver, that's great. But until we get some people in these buildings in Midtown, some life, it's going to be difficult to get any sort of, you know, spirit going in Midtown. But if you go uptown, you see that it can exist and does exist. So hopefully people will come home after Labor Day.
So I think in summation, you know, the same way that Robert brought up 9/11, New York City is resilient. If we resolve certain things, we have a vaccine, and we have people who are boosters, like everyone sitting here today to New York City, we will be positive. I'd like to thank Robert, David, Scott, and David, and I'll see you next week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.